Welcome to today's Planning Committee meeting, Craven District Council. I'm Councillor Brockbank. I'm Chairman of the committee, and the meeting is being live streamed on YouTube. Can I just remind members, please, that we will carry out the meeting with members and officers on mute, and that if you want to speak, then if you'll raise your virtual hand, please. Also, if you arrive late, anyone arriving late, which I don't think we have that today, if you let Democratic Services know, and also if you need to leave the meeting, you also let Democratic Services know. Before we begin, I'm going to introduce our officers. We have Alex Strickland, who's our legal advisor. We have Neville Watson, who's our planning manager, and we have Hannah Scales, who's Democratic Services officer, and Guy Close, who's Democratic Services manager. There is no late information today. I've just checked that with Guy. I haven't seen any late information. Is that correct?
No, I'm not aware of any.
Okay, thank you. So we will go on to the
As a matter of interest, Chairman, there's a email just come through from Droughts Parish Council with some information they wish us to read.
Yes, Guy, do you want to explain that?
Yes, I think that's the statements that's going to be read out as part of the council's public participation scheme. So they just wanted all members to have a copy of that. So that'll be addressed at the suitable point in the meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Pringle. You had your hand raised. Did you want to say something?
Forgive me, I was just going to say we have had some late information from Droughts Parish Council.
Oh, thank you.
Exactly what Councillor Sutcliffe.
Thank you. Okay, so first item of business is any apologies for absence, and to take the roll call, please, Guy.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. So apologies for absence from Councillor Handley, and notification that Councillor Whitaker is a substitute for Councillor Handley. And then a quick roll call, if I may. So starting with Councillor Brockbank.
Here.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
I'm here.
Councillor Heseltine.
Present.
Councillor Liz.
Present.
Councillor Morell.
Present.
Councillor Place.
Present.
Councillor Pringle.
Present.
Councillor Rose.
Present.
Councillor Shuttleworth.
Present.
Councillor Sutcliffe.
Just unmute myself, present, Guy.
Thank you. And Councillor Whitaker. If you could.
Present.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor. Is everyone present?
Thank you, Guy. So we're moving on now to item 2, confirmation of the minutes. Could I have a proposer and seconder for the minutes, please, of the previous meeting? Proposed by Councillor Liss.
I'll second that, Chairman.
I think Councillor Morell just beat you to it. He got his hand up just before you, but thank you all the same, Councillor Sutcliffe. So Councillor Morell seconded. So moving on next to public participation. Guy, do we have anyone who'd like to speak to us? Any members of the public?
Not at this stage of the meeting, no.
Thank you. Next item is declarations of interest. So does any member have any interest to declare on any of today's applications? If you do, could you please state which applications they are and the type of interest you're declaring, whether it's an Appendix A or an Appendix B? Don't have any hands raised. No virtual hands raised. So no declarations of interest for today. Declarations of lobbying. Could you please state which application you've been lobbied on and whether you were lobbied for or against that application, please. Councillor Brown has got his...
Drafton for and against, and Clapham largely against.
Thank you. Councillor Rose, I'm starting. Yeah, Councillor Rose.
Lobbying against mainly for the Clapham application.
Councillor Place.
Thank you, Chairman. Lobbied by email against application 21775 at Clapham.
Thank you. Councillor Pringle.
Drafton for and against, and I'd like to put on record that yesterday I visited Clapham and I did speak to the applicant and I spoke to 2 of the objectors. So I've been lobbied actively on those as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lewis.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I've been lobbied for and against the Drafton application, and I've been lobbied against the Clapham application. Thank you.
Councillor Morell.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. For and against Clapham and against Lawton.
Thank you. I've been lobbied against Clapham and I have been lobbied for and against Drafton. That's everybody.
Oh, that's me, Chairman.
Oh, sorry, you haven't got your, sorry, you haven't got your hand up. Right, okay.
I've got my hand up.
Have you?
It's gone down now.
Oh.
Right, anyway, very briefly, for and against Drafton and against numerous complaints against the Clapham application.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Right, I think that's it. Mr. Strickland, you have your hand up.
Yes, Chair, thank you. Just very quickly, just to remind members that they need to keep an open mind on all matters until the point of decision, notwithstanding any lobbying that's been carried out. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay. So moving on to the schedule of plans for today, we have 2 items for today. The first item is 2019-20400, and that's a full application from Mr. R. Slingsby and Mr. D. Mitchell. This is land at Grafton Heights, Height Lane, Grafton, and it has been deferred from the previous meeting. Just before we go into the discussion, I'm going to run the debate like I did last time, and that is that we'll have the officers' presentation and then the speakers, and then I'll ask the planning manager to respond, and then we'll have the debate, questions to officers during the debate, and then we'll make the proposal, and then officers will respond after that. Points of order if people will raise their virtual hands, I want us to be very clear when we make a reason for either a refusal or of an application. I want us to be very clear what that reason is, and so that we can all vote on it and all members understand what that reason is. Okay, so can we, Mr. Watson, would you like to give us, do we have an officer today, or are you presenting both applications? You're on mute.
Chairman, I'll be doing the presentations for both applications.
Okay, good, thank you. Would you like to take us through the first one then, please?
Can you all see that?
Not yet. There we go. Yes, it's come through now. Thank you.
Chairman, this is an application for fishing lakes, a wildlife lake and camping pods, toilet block and associated car parking at Drafton Heights. The application was deferred from the meeting last month and the officer report has been updated to address the points that members wanted clarification on. That's the site plan, effectively showing you where the 3 lakes would be, and those are the camping pods with the toilet block there, access from the lane. That's an aerial photograph of the site just to set the picture up with the A65 to the north of the site, and then the lane that comes down off the A65 into the site located there. This is a photograph taken from effectively the access point down the track, and that's the view looking north into where the lakes and the pods would be. That's a wider view northwest of the site. So you see the setup there, the site plan with the 3 lakes, the pods, and the toilet block and car parking. That's what the pods would look like. Quite common in terms of timber construction, simple accommodation, but nevertheless providing a tourist function. So you'll see it's got a small area with a shower, bedroom, and a deck out to the front. That's the elevations of the toilet block, and the floor plans showing obviously a laundry, ladies and gents toilets, and shower accommodation. Chairman, that's the end of the slideshow. If I can just take you to specifically paragraphs 962 through to 964. Those were the issues that members raised at the last meeting, and hopefully that provides members with some information on the details that the deferral took place. Just one point that isn't picked up in that, but I can confirm that the foul drainage from the toilet block will go to a package treatment plant on site. Thank you, Chairman. There's nothing further that I want to add to the presentation and report at this stage, but I'll answer any questions in due course. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we have some speakers for this application. From the Parish Council, we have Councillor Billing from Drafton Parish Council and Jane Markham.
I think it might be, I just need to confirm, I think it might be Parish Councillor Richard Neal. I don't know if Councillor Neal.
Correct, yes, I'm here, yes.
Okay, right, I'll change it then. Neil, okay. Right, and are you going to give a joint presentation, or are you going to share your 5 minutes, or is just one of you going to give a presentation?
No, I will do the presentation, Richard Neal.
Okay, thank you. In that case, Councillor Neal, you have 5 minutes to speak. So could you, well, you're already unmuted. Could you just introduce yourself before you begin your presentation, please? Thank you.
Thank you and good afternoon. I'm Richard Neal, Parish Councillor. The Council addressed your last meeting on 15th March and raised serious concerns with this proposed development, all of them material planning considerations. I'll highlight 2 of them: potential impact on local hydrology systems and the unsatisfactory site access route, which continues to attract objections from other consultees. The Council welcomed your decision to defer this item to get further information. We have now scrutinised the officer's revised report and the 2 reports on the borehole at the site available on your website. In light of discussions at the last meeting, the Council had anticipated sight of detailed advice and specialist reports clearly addressing the concerns raised at the March meeting. We were surprised and dismayed to see the report drafted in its current form. It appears that the only additional information now offered to members is the brief section of the matters at the end of the committee report, plus the comments on the borehole. This does not deal comprehensively with the matters raised. More worryingly still, the new section in the officer's report is not fully supported with evidence. At the last meeting and in the local press since, an inaccurate impression has been given that the local farms have all the water they need from the main supply. Some of the farms are unconcerned about the development, but not all, and the closest businesses maintain their objection to it. Some farms' facilities are connected to the mains, but again, not all, and many of the field troughs rely on the local springs to provide water for grazing stock. We know for a fact that misleading information has been provided to you in this respect. Without evidence, we have no way of assessing the accuracy of other statements now made in your report. To answer the questions legitimately raised at the last meeting, the Parish Council expected to see a more comprehensive, evidence-based approach with expert reports, not just on the borehole, but also on the local water table and network of springs and becks. The advice from Dales Water indicates that extraction from the borehole may not affect the Heights livery business, but it clearly states that no guarantees are given that abstracting water from one source may not affect another. The reports available to members seem to be entirely silent on the question of any impact on the local springs and watercourses, which are, of course, much closer to the development site than the riding centre. We are particularly disappointed that there is no amendment made to the condition proposed for the planning consent as regards priority water flows. As the report stands, there is no indication of how water extraction and usage on the site will be monitored. It is not at all clear how and at what point and by whom any interventions will be made and enforcement action taken in the event of problems developing downhill. The report mentions the requirement for ensuring there is no deterioration in the ecological status of water bodies in line with the Water Framework Directive, but this fundamental issue is not then analysed in terms of how the potential effects of this development could be mitigated. More robust requirements to protect habitats and to ensure sustainability of water supplies should surely be introduced. The Council is calling for an improved planning condition drawn from specialist reports on local water systems, clearly identifying the preventative action required to ensure damage is not caused in the first place. The Parish Council might also have been reassured to see a detailed planning appraisal of the impact on this sensitive moorland site of building an access road in open countryside. The report analyses the impact of the pond site development itself, but there is no assessment of the development on the moor opposite. As the report notes, the uplands here are of sufficiently high quality to be designated as a special landscape area within the local plan. A clear and transparent appraisal of the impact on moorland biodiversity and also on the impact of any poor design elements on the landscape's visual amenity should surely be expected, especially as a proposal for a new build access track was submitted separately almost a year after the original application. Without more information and expert reports on this, as distinct from the development of the ponds, the Parish Council has doubts that it complies with the local plan's environment policies. These are designed specifically to protect our outstanding countryside and our treasured environmental assets. Any potential harms to these assets should be fully and transparently assessed. The Parish Council is thus not at all satisfied that our serious concerns with this application have been thoroughly investigated. We would therefore request that this application be again deferred to allow time for further specialist reports to be commissioned and circulated for public consultation. The Parish Council recommends that this application should not be supported as it stands for all the reasons we brought to your attention in our address to the March meeting. If a decision has to be made today, we urge you to refuse it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, Robert.
Yes, Councillor Hazeltine. Yeah.
If I may just say a few words. That presentation from the Grafton Parish Council was exceptionally comprehensive, touched all the points. It's important that we get this application, if it's going to be allowed, and I would hope not at the end of the day, but if it is to be allowed, then it has to be correct, and it has to be conditioned correctly, and it has to be so it can be enforced rigidly. And we're not at that point yet. As you were aware, Madam Chairman, this application was deferred for Craven's Planning Department to seek clarification and answers to a list of outstanding matters and concerns of not just members but the Droughts Parish Council. It would appear that apart from a conversation the planning officer has had with the applicant, our planning department has not undertaken any independent research. With regards to hydrology...
Councillor Heseltine, can I just stop you there? We do have the applicant who is yet to speak. So,
right, no problem.
Okay,
yes,
now that's okay. And I'll come to you first when we go to the debate. Okay.
Thank you.
Right.
Sorry for interrupting.
No, that's fine. Thank you. So we have now Caroline Sunter, who's the agent of the applicant, and where now? Oh, there you are. That's it. Welcome. You're already unmuted. Would you like to introduce yourself, please, before you give us your presentation?
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Caroline Sunter, agent on behalf of the applicants, and thank you for allowing me to speak again on this application. Following deferral of the application last month's meeting, the applicants have taken on board the committee's concerns and have provided additional information, which we hope has provided clarification and reassurance. Coming to the points in turn, number 1, water supply and extraction rates. We have submitted letters from Dales Water who explain the hydrology of the site and the area and the level of extraction proposed. Dales Water are a long-established company who are very familiar with the area, having put in the Riding School's borehole in the 1980s and more recently this site's borehole. They confirm that there is a good volume of water available and that the proposed low level of extraction will not adversely affect the hydrology of the area or properties downstream. This clarification is reflected in letters provided by 2 local landowners whose land adjoins the site. They, having lived and farmed in the immediate locality all their lives, know the site and the surrounding hydrology as well as anyone, and they fully support the proposals. We appreciate that the Parish Council wants to protect the water supply in the area, but this confirmation from local landowners and Dales Water show that the Parish Council's concerns are unfounded. To confirm, the proposal will be served by a new on-site package treatment plant, and a non-mains drainage assessment was submitted with the application. Number 2, access. The access to the site, as seen on the photograph, is a track, not a path, as referred to by an objector. This track is already used by the applicants to access their forestry business, with no conflict with bridleway users. The applicants welcome and respect the bridleway users. Indeed, the County Council paid them to repair the bridleway to improve accessibility for all users. To put the objections into context, the applicant's security cameras show that in the last 8 days, only 3 horses have used the bridleway. The potential for conflict between users is therefore low. An increased presence at the site will deter 4x4 use. Indeed, a few months ago, the applicants reported a group of 4x4s who were quickly dealt with by the police. To clarify, additional land was bought to ensure access to the site for visitors, but the bridleway route will be unaffected. The applicants are happy to put in passing places if needed and erect appropriate signage to make visitors aware that the access is, in part, a bridleway. Number 3, sustainability. In terms of energy efficiency, the applicants are more than happy to add solar panels to the proposed toilet block roof if required, and can also explore the prospect of including electric vehicle charging points in the car park. It is important to note that the applicants have already planted around 20,000 trees and a significant length of hedgerow, with a further 10,000 new trees and shrubs proposed as part of the landscaping scheme. The benefits to the environment and improvements to habitats and biodiversity for the local area should not be overlooked. Indeed, this level of upland tree planting will be very helpful to the prevention of flooding in the valley, and the applicants should be praised and supported for this. The area is not pristine and unspoiled, and the land does not have any specific environmental designation. The applicants should be supported in wanting to improve the biodiversity and create habitat at the site. In terms of sustainability, it is accepted that the majority of visitors will travel to the site by car and that the site is observed by public transport. But this could be said of the majority of tourism businesses in the district. The site is not remote, being only minutes from the A65, and is much more accessible than many other parts of the district. The reliance on car use is offset through the significant tree and shrub planting proposed and the additional energy efficiency measures suggested. To conclude, the proposal represents a diversification of an existing business that will create local employment and encourage tourism in the area, thereby contributing to the local economy. The fishing will provide an outdoor leisure activity, bringing the associated health and social benefits. The creation of ponds and comprehensive landscaping will improve biodiversity, enhancing the environment. The applicants have worked with the council throughout the process. They took pre-application advice in 2018, submitting the application in April 2019. The application was on the agenda for Planning Committee in March 2020, which was cancelled due to COVID, and they have patiently waited a whole year for the application to be finally brought back to committee last month. They have done everything that the council has asked. Your planning officer recommends approval. The statutory consultancies have no issues, and so please support this local business in wanting to bring employment and leisure facilities to the district and simultaneously improving biodiversity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to mute you. Right, okay, so there are no more speakers, and we also don't have a ward councillor. It was myself who called this in because there's no ward councillor. Councillor Heseltine is actually the North Yorkshire County Councillor, and so I'm going to ask Councillor Heseltine to speak first because he has familiarity with the area, for want of a better word. Councillor Heseltine, can I'm just going to go to Mr. Watson, who on my screen is frozen at the moment, but I'm just going to go to Mr. Watson to see if he's unfrozen yet. I have a couple of questions I want to ask him, so if you just bear with me. Mr. Watson, are you able? I can't hear you at the moment, and you seem to be frozen on my screen. I don't know if that's me or you.
Well, I'm moving around, moving around now, and I hope you can hear me.
Ah, right. Yes, that's it. Thank you. Right. And I have a couple of questions I want to ask. Do you want to give us your comments first of all, and I'll see if my comments are still, my questions are still applicable.
Well, clearly you've heard the views of the parish council, and you've had a response from the applicant's agent, and I don't think there's anything more that I can add to that.
There was a mention by the parish council that there was misleading information given, which is something that concerns me because members obviously have make their decision on the information that's presented. Are you aware of any misleading information that's being given?
I'm not aware of any misleading information, no.
Okay. There was a concern by the parish council about monitoring of water usage on the site. Do you want to comment on that at all? You're muted.
You've had the advice from the applicant's agent and the discussions that have taken place with Dales Water and the local farming community. So in that sense, I think that the condition suggested is that condition 5, that the flow of spring water into the beck should be maintained and protected. I'm not certain how strongly you can make that, because that potentially would be enforceable if there was any reduction in the supply and or protection of that water, that source.
Okay, thank you for that. And then going on to the applicant's agent, has said that the bridleway route won't be affected. I'll come back to you when we go to the debate and ask you a question about that. So we now go to Councillor Heseltine. Are you still with us, Councillor Heseltine?
Patiently as ever. Right.
Okay.
The applicant's agent certainly paints a very rosy picture. I believe the misinformation that's been referred to has been that there was a statement made that the farms surrounding this application site were all on mains water, and the farmhouses are on mains water, and some of the buildings next to the farm houses are on mains water, but some not on, and certainly the fields are served by springs. I think that was what was at dispute. If I could continue then, as I say, apart from the conversation the planning officer has had with the applicant, our planning department has not undertaken any independent research, and that's been highlighted by the parish council. Certainly with regards to hydrology of the site, conflict with the bridleway and footpath users, intrusion into dark skies, site security, and in relation to our concerns on sustainability of the proposals, it is now said that the planting of trees and shrubs and solar panels will satisfy any concerns. I must admit that I do feel that the officer response is somewhat lightweight. As one of our members said last meeting, though, who are we as members to challenge or question our professional officers or other professionals? I have spoken with two of the three farmer landowners concerned. One has declared an interest because of current land adjustments being made with the applicant, although that farmer landowner has no objections. The farmer to the west of the site, who incidentally sold the application site and accessed the bridleway on the Roman road, has no objections. But the farmer who has the land directly below the site has very strong objections. No financial interest with the applicant, no land transactions or anything like that, and he is exceptionally fearful that most of his fields will have no water for the stock in summer months. And that's a fear that he has and could well be a possibility. Now, on page 16, Madam Chairman, the main paragraph, second paragraph down, at the top says that you don't need a licence for less than 20 cubic metres a day. 20 cubic metres is 4,400 gallons a day. That is a heap of water. And it also says if a customer thinks they've been near this limit but are not certain, it is good practice to install a meter to measure exactly how much water they are abstracting. Condition 5, if this application unfortunately does get passed, condition 5 surely needs reinforcing with an additional sentence of a condition that a meter to measure the abstraction rate is attached to that borehole. The reasons, apart from the hydrology, Madam Chairman, which frightens me to death as someone who's farmed most of their life and actually farmed through terrific droughts over the years, introducing vehicular traffic onto a well-used bridleway and footpath is detrimental and dangerous to the current legal users, and the total lack of any security in such an extremely remote, unspoilt landscape is just asking for trouble. I'll leave it at that and listen to my colleagues' thoughts.
Yeah, thank you for that. We have, I don't know who had the hand up first. I think it might have been Councillor Brown who had his hand up first. Is
I
that
think
correct?
Councillor Morell usually has his thunder stolen by me, so let's reverse the process and let him go first.
Well, thank you, Councillor Brown, and thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I have to say I was quite alarmed by something the applicant's agent said, which was that the applicant has actually reported 4x4 users to the police, and the police swiftly dealt with them. Are the applicants then therefore going to ban any tourists from using this site to have 4x4s? I mean, that's quite an alarming statement to have heard, and I'm trying to wonder what the implications of that are, but that does really ring alarm bells for me.
Okay, thank you. Is that it? Councillor Brown.
Yeah, I must admit I interpreted that all as off-roading dodgy 4x4 use as opposed to the occasional Chelsea tractor trundling to the fishing pond, but that's my interpretation. To me, there are 4 issues here, and the real thing is how many of them can be dealt with by conditions, and whether there are any that can't possibly be dealt with by conditions. So I'm going to try and run through the 4 issues and try and see whether there are conditions that could enable us to pass this with those conditions. First issue is biodiversity and landscape, and I have to say my sympathies are largely with the applicant. I think that ponds and tree planting has a real potential to increase the biodiversity in this area and make it possible for a wider range of wildlife to survive there. So I think this could be dealt with if we were more clear than condition number 6. Condition number 6 really talks about handling harm. Our actual council policy is that we should be increasing biodiversity, and I think the applicants are quite capable of doing that, have plans that could enable them to do that. So I think the first condition should be that we strengthen condition 6 to say that they should be demonstrating how biodiversity will be increased by this development before they proceed. I think they can do that fairly easily, so that they should be required to demonstrate how biodiversity will be increased. So put in a statement explaining how that's going to be achieved. I think they can do that. Second thing,
Councillor Brown, can I just ask you, in demonstrating that, I mean, that's quite a broad statement. Obviously, Mr. Watson will come back on that. It's quite a broad statement. Is there anything in particular? Can you narrow it down a little bit more?
Well, the sort of things we would expect to see in a statement about that would be the nature of the trees that they intend to plant, the nature of the wildlife that will exist in the wildlife pond, the nature of the birds that might be able to frog life, etc. I don't think it's going to be hard for the applicant to put in a statement that explains how they can increase biodiversity. I think that's quite achievable and quite a quick job.
Okay.
Second thing I think that needs to be addressed on a similar theme is compliance with our carbon neutral policy. The applicant indicated that they're willing to provide solar panels and a toilet block on a toilet block, and also to provide electric vehicle charging points. I think, again, it should be a requirement, a condition, that they submit a plan explaining the measures that will be taken to comply with the council's declaration of a climate emergency. Again, as I say, I think their indication to us is that they intend to do that. So we simply require them to put in a plan that says that and get it approved by the officers. That's the second thing. Third and fourth get more difficult. The third is water. And condition 5 is pretty good. Condition 5 says the flow of spring water into the beck shall be maintained and protected and shall at all times take priority over the use of this source of water for supplying the proposed lakes. That's pretty good. I think there are a couple of issues it doesn't satisfy me about. One is the Parish Council raised a lot of questions about being sure in advance about how it's going to be filled and all those kind of things. And I agree with Councillor Esselstyn, we haven't seen enough precise information about that. And I would like to see a plan for how they are going to be filled, submitted and approved by the officers. The second thing that concerns me is in fishing ponds, sometimes people apply chemical treatments, depending on the density of the fish population. I wouldn't want to be drawing my water downstream if chemical treatments were allowed for the fishing. And therefore, I think we should be putting a condition on saying that chemical treatments will not be applied that interfere with the immunity of downstream users. The third thing is, Councillor Esselstyn quite rightly mentioned droughts. And I just don't know how we deal with this. And this is one of the things that's got me torn between proposing acceptance with conditions and going for rejection. And the question is, can we put controls on extraction in summer? Could we put a control on saying that between the months of July and August, no extraction would take place from boreholes or something of that nature? So I'm looking to find a condition that would enable us to proceed on that. And I'm not yet convinced I've seen one. The fourth area is the one that gives me the greatest difficulty, which is heritage and the pathway. I walked this on Saturday and every 400 yards was saying good morning to somebody who was passing in the other direction. Much used path. I looked up the history of it. It is thought by most people to be a Roman road. The sites I looked at indicated that it was actually more likely to be, it's certainly as old as the 1755 Turnpike Road. You can see the Turnpike building on Shortbank Road. It runs all the way through. So it's clearly a 1755 Turnpike Road of important historical nature. And it is possibly a Roman road. Nobody actually knows for certain. One of the sites I looked at said the Roman road went lower. Other sites suggested this was the Roman road. I don't think anybody's actually done the archaeology. And that's something that we haven't got with us. We haven't got a heritage report. Despite it being a valuable ancient road, we haven't got any assessment of the archaeology. We haven't got, I'm concerned about statements like there will be passing points created, because the only way you can make passing points is to interfere with the ditches either side and the nature of that walk that so many people enjoy. And I would prefer it if there weren't passing points. And I'd prefer it. So my question really to the committee is, if we put on a condition saying there should be no changes to the access road without a plan being submitted to the council and heritage officers' assessment of the implications, are we sufficiently trustful that we could pass it with something like that? Or do we want to see that actually nailed down before we can really vote for it? And that to me is my question to the fellow councillors, that this is an important walkway, an important views, important historical route to say 1755 Turnpike for sure, possibly Roman. And we have a policy 5.23, which is all about heritage and says any harm or loss of a heritage asset through destruction, alteration or harm to its setting will require clear and convincing justification. And a policy ENV2B that says ensuring that proposals affecting a designated heritage asset or an archaeological site of national importance conserve these elements which contribute to its significance. I'm not convinced we've yet seen nailed down conditions which guarantee us 5.23 and ENV2B of our own plans. I am open to being convinced that that can be achieved. I'll shut up and listen to people.
Right, sorry about that. Having some technical issues there. Right, yeah, okay, thank you for that. Very comprehensive. The next person was Councillor Shuttleworth.
Thank you, Chairman. As you know, I wasn't present at the last meeting, but I have had the benefit of watching on YouTube in glorious Technicolor your discussions about this particular application. I took it upon myself on Easter Tuesday to take my dog for a walk from the access point at Grafton Heights on what is thought to be the old Roman road. It's certainly runs in a straight line, virtual straight line, from Ilkley to Elslack, where there were Roman forts and settlements on both. But anyway, we're not yet to get into the archaeology of the history of the road. I met 6 people, 3 couples, full stop, and 2 or 3 sheep. This was Easter Tuesday. Now, in fairness, when I was walking up there, the weather declined. It was cold. It was a freezing northeaster and it started to snow. My immediate reaction was anybody who wants to sit round a pond fishing in this sort of weather deserves a medal. But anyway, that's just a light-hearted comment. It was said at the last meeting that the site couldn't be seen except from 1 or 2 very remote places. In fact, it can be seen from Eastby, which is part of my ward. You would need a pair of very powerful binoculars or a telescope to make out any detail. And most people just see the silhouette of the horizon against the sky. It's been commented about lighting and dark skies policy. When you look at night over that horizon, from my part of the world, you can see an orange glow of Silsden and further parts of West Yorkshire. So I don't know about dark skies being spoiled. I can appreciate some concern as to water supply, but in the absence of any very detailed survey involving major disruption to plot the strata levels and water content, I don't see how we can give any assurance that the water supply won't be affected. We can impose a requirement to put a meter at the bore head, and as soon as that registers, is it 20 cubic meters a day, or is that a month? Anyway, there are figures quoted from requiring a license. That could trigger some safeguards off. But as regards the flow of water underground, who knows? Really, and it does make me question, when a farmer acquires a property or takes on grazing, what legal right does he have to ensure that supply is maintained? I honestly don't think he does. It's just the way nature behaves. And from a bore 50 odd meters deep, this is, I hardly think it's going to affect any shallow spring supplies. Very, very unlikely. It's been commented about providing passing places on the bridleway. Yes, they could be provided at periodic intervals. But to me, the nature of the site isn't going to encourage any significant flow of traffic. It's the sort of place where people will go, park up, and either bed down or sit at a pond, or possibly go for a walk. And the traffic levels aren't, there isn't going to be a continual to-ing and fro-ing of traffic. And I think that's about it. The only other thing I was going to say was if the supply does interfere, the borehole supply does interfere with neighbouring spring and field supplies, it's likely going to be the case of trying to shut the stable door after the horse has bolted. And how things can be reinstated, I don't think anyone will give any guarantee. Anyway, those are my thoughts. If anyone else is bursting to speak, I'll be happy to listen to them and then listen to Mr. Watson and think about things a bit more. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think Councillor Pringle is bursting to speak. Regarding the water supply, can I just check with Mr. Watson, please, that am I right in thinking that I read in the hydrology report that was commissioned by the applicant that the borehole will supply sufficient water, well, actually more water than what the requirements of the site will be. If that's correct, is that correct? So
that's my understanding, Chairman. Yes.
Right. So there's no need for any town's water or anything. Quite right. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. Councillor Pringle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, rarely I agree with most of what everybody's said. I apologise to Councillor Shuttleworth. Yes, you can see it from Eastby. And I found out yesterday that you can in fact see it from Coniston Coal. But that doesn't mean to say it's a bad thing. I see both sides. I lived there for 20 years. If they were going to tarmac the Roman road, I would be voting against this, but they're not. I do have an issue with the water, and I wouldn't want to think that one farmer got left without water, but we're not experts. And think about it, when you fill a pond up, once it's full, the water that comes in goes out. So provided we make him fill it up when there isn't a drought on, i.e. put in condition 5, if he's going to use spring water rather than the borehole, it has to be filled in winter, then I would say that's as good as we can get. I haven't got a problem with it. I think it's the weirdest planning application we will ever see as a committee. I'm glad some members have been to see it, but it doesn't matter whether we think it's weird or not. We've got policies in our local plan. And our local plan says that we have to support tourism, we have to support local businesses, and I think I'm at the end of the day going to support it at the risk of upsetting some people. I do have a couple of concerns, but Alex is going to tell me that they're totally irrelevant. The concerns are that once there's 7 pods on there, he'll want another 7 and then another 7, and then he'll want a manager's house. But Alex is going to tell me, by the way of a nod, that I can't consider what's going to go in the...
Yeah, just to confirm on that, members must look at the application that's in front of them. Thank you, Chair.
Future, I've got to look, and like I said, Andy Brown, and I'm more than happy with putting everything he said, And I would suggest a condition that the ponds can't be filled from the stream water during anything but wet winter months. And I'm happy to propose that we pass it. How about that one? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Pringle. So we have a proposal for officer's recommendation of approval. We have a seconder.
Yeah, I'm prepared to second it with conditions, but.
Okay, hang on, sorry. Councillor Place had his hand up, was a bit quicker than you were, Councillor Brown. Councillor Place had his hand up, but just bear with me a minute. Pringle. So, Councillor Brown, you would be happy with some conditions, and I haven't spoken yet, and neither has Councillor Whitaker. Well, I have spoken a bit, but Councillor Whitaker, you haven't spoken yet.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My problem, I haven't, this is the first time I've heard this on this subject, but the potable water, that is the supplying of drinking water. I haven't heard any mention of that. And is it coming from a correct source, or are they having to bucket it in? Because all I've heard them talking about is water for the springs and the ponds. Does that come under Craven District's Environmental Health Department? Because they test all the water for drinking water. I'll leave that with you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Whitaker. I think I've got to refer to Mr. Watson. I think I heard someone say that all the farmhouses were on had their own water supply or town's water. Mr. Watson, do you know, is that correct?
I can't give you a definitive answer on that one, Chairman. I'm sorry, I don't know what the local supply is. Councillor Whitaker's point about monitoring drinking water for the effectively the lodges, the camping pods, rather than the lake. That supply would be monitored by, if it comes from boreholes or springs, would be monitored by our Environmental Health Department, and that's where the check and trace would come from.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I've got some concerns about the usage of the bridle path as far as vehicles are concerned. The British Horse Society made a comment, and they actually objected to the application on the basis that vehicles and horses don't mix, and that it would affect the health and well-being of the public resource. And there was a comment as well on the website about passing places, that they wanted passing places. And I don't see any passing places proposed. So I would like to see some passing places if possible. And I'm not sure if I think the applicant might have already said that they were prepared to put some passing places in. As I understand it, there is a particularly narrow place on the bridle path where there were concerns by one of the commentators, the public commentators. And if that narrow area, I don't know which it is because I don't know the path myself, but if that area is narrow and is difficult for horses and people and cyclists and vehicles to pass, then something should be done about that. So I'd welcome Councillor Brown's proposal about, I think it was Councillor Brown's proposal about passing places. Councillor, I've got 3 hands up now. Councillor Brown, Councillor Pringle and Councillor Morell, and you have already spoken. Is there anything new that you want to add, please? Councillor Brown.
2 things. I just want to first clarify that I was opposed to passing places because I felt that the heritage impact, and I just wanted any proposals for passing places to be clarified by officers. What I really wanted to ask is whether the applicants, sorry, the proposers and seconded the motion would be prepared to accept the 4 conditions that I was suggesting we applied to it. I can re-clarify those if there's any doubt, but I'd be grateful if they would consider incorporating those conditions in their proposal.
Okay, let me just ask then, Councillor Pringle, you were one of the, you proposed.
Just 2 things, just to clarify, more than happy for everything Andy Brown said, which can be picked up from the tape at a later date.
Well, I want to get those conditions written down. So we'll get them. We'll get Councillor Brown to go through them. And if your seconder, who was Councillor Place, is still here. Councillor Place has gone blank on my screen. Are you still there, Councillor Place? Yeah. Are you? If we go through those conditions. Right. Are you happy with those conditions? If we go through the conditions again?
As is Councillor Pringle, I'm more than happy.
Could I make one
Thank
suggestion
you.
before we go through? Because the issue of passing places and the access, I think I can explain. If you all look at the map that you've got, that map there, the Roman road is a straight line, but in the middle, we come off the Roman road. And as I understand it, what this guy has been clever enough to do is to buy a bit of a field, and he will have to put a track in that field. And if we don't want to spoil the Roman road, the answer is to have the passing places where it goes on and off the Roman road. So if Councillor Brown wants a condition with passing places that won't affect the Roman road, that would be the place to do it. Thank you.
Right, okay. Councillor Sutcliffe, you haven't spoken before. Do you want to unmute yourself and let us hear what you have to say? Okay.
Myself, thank you. I've deliberately listened rather than contributing to the debate early on. And I must admit, on reflection, I do have some concerns about this application. Practically every speaker that has spoken in principle in favour of the application has a
You've frozen, Councillor Sutcliffe. Is that just me, or is it you? Guy, can you hear Councillor Sutcliffe? Because I can't.
No, I think there's an issue with Councillor Sutcliffe's connection.
Okay, let's just give him a couple of minutes to see if it comes back. Not.
Chair, would you like me to use the time to try and clarify these conditions whilst
Yes.
trying to do it?
Yes, please. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That'd be great.
I had 4 conditions. The first was that a plan should be submitted and approved by our officers demonstrating how biodiversity will be increased by the development. That's in line with ENV 4A. Okay. If you've got that, tell me and I'll go on to the next one. Next one is
I'm looking
that a plan will be submitted which indicates how the applicant will comply with the council's declaration of a climate emergency. That's basically electric vehicle charging points and solar panels on the roof. People have got that. Then on water, I think 2 conditions. First, a plan will be submitted demonstrating how condition 5 will be achieved prior to commencement of work. And the second condition is that extraction shall not take place during dry summer months. And you may or may not be comfortable with my condition that the applicant should not apply chemical treatments to the fish pond that place at risk downstream users.
Madam Chairman,
heritage, I'm suggesting. Can I just finish, Robert? No, I can stop it. So, final one on the road is I'd like no changes to the access road without a plan submitted to the council.
Oh, can you just say that again, please, Councillor Brown, because I lost
assessment.
Right, thank you. Right,
I'm basically saying if we change something, let's make sure it's not going to mess up the heritage.
Yeah, okay. Oh, when you say about the access road, I am concerned about this narrow. As I say, I don't know the road, but I am concerned about the comment that said there was a narrow place that needed a passing place.
What I've tried to do, Linda, is put it in the hands of our officers so that they can judge which is the best way of resolving your difficulty and my heritage concern.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So
I've now got.
Oh, you're back, Councillor Sutcliffe. Right. Okay. While you were away, we've identified all the conditions, which Guy is going to read back in a minute. But
Madam Chairman, Madam Chairman, before you move off these conditions.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Sutcliffe. Can you just hang on, Councillor Sutcliffe, while Councillor Heseltine just clarifies.
There's just one outstanding condition to do with water hydrology. And I think Councillor Brown was intimating he would support it. That we strengthen condition 5 up as well by including a condition that we put a meter on to measure the abstraction rate, and then there's no confusion. They're either within your 20 cube or outside it.
I'm covered with that. I'm not the proposer.
Okay, right. And Councillor
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Heseltine. Councillor Place, were you happy with that as the seconder? Gosh, people are coming and going all over. Councillor Place. Hello, Councillor Place. Okay, I can't get a response at the moment from Councillor Place.
I'm through now, Chairman.
Oh, there you go.
I don't know what the problem was, but yes, a meter makes a lot of sense. And if Councillor Pringle as proposer is in favour, I am happy to accept it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pringle, you happy? Yeah.
I have absolutely no problem with a meter, but the problem that I do have is Councillor Brown said we're not going to let him extract from his borehole in dry conditions. He's already got a borehole and he's already allowed to extract from it. So we need to cross out the bit and replace it with, we'll put a meter You can't stop him doing something he's already allowed to do. And the final point, to try and clarify again, are we happy as a committee that we don't want to spoil the Roman road? So any passing places, which is what Linda Brockbank seems to want, Councillor Brown seems to want, should be off the Roman road in the field bit where the diversion is. Because if we all know what we want, then it's a lot easier for the officer to work it out with the applicant. Where the track goes off the Roman road into the field, that's the point for the passing places, surely. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Sutcliffe.
Yes, Chairman. As I was saying before, my concern was that everybody who has spoken in principle in favour of this proposal has qualified his or her assessment of the situation with a request for condition. And we've now got a situation where we've got a lot of conditions which members would seem to be inclined to attach to any possible approval of the application. Historically, we know from adverse experience that it's better to get things resolved, if possible, in advance of an approval or any other decision, rather than to rely on the applicant voluntarily accepting the conditions which we put on the approval. At the end of the day, and there has been some classic examples of it in the past, it's manifested itself quite simply in a quite sizable task for enforcement to ensure that these conditions are implemented. I think here that we're cruising into a dangerous waters here, that it would be better to allow the officers a period of time to reassess all these conditions and come back to this committee with a comprehensive revised list. At the end of the day, if we approve it with the conditions, we've discharged our duty, you could say, but we may in fact have done no more than created a downwind problem for the enforcement department. So I will not be supporting it, but I'll probably abstain from the vote, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Liss, you haven't spoken. I'll come to you after Councillor Liss. Councillor
Thank you,
Shuttleworth.
Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, using your system, Chairman, we have yet to hear what the officer has to say about our proposed reasons for approving this. I personally am quite comfortable with the reasons, but as you have suggested, we should await we should await Mr. Watson's views on the reasons for approval. And I thought we all understood that, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you for that. Councillor Shuttleworth, and then I'm going to go to Mr. Watson.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just one question. Are we still talking about a condition which denies the applicant right to top up the ponds in dry weather or drought conditions? Because it's a question of how we define that in quantitative terms, isn't it? And I just think we ought to avoid putting a condition on that's rather, shall we say, flexible. It's a matter of opinion.
I mean, the difficulty is that if he's got fish in there and if there's wildlife in there, then there is a risk to the wildlife and to the fish. So, you know, from a humane point of view, as far as the aquatic and animal life is concerned, bird life is concerned, I'm going to let Mr. Watson answer that because he's the expert. Oh golly, we've got Councillor Brown and Councillor Pringle again. Councillor Shuttleworth, is there anything else you wanted to say on that? Because you've still got your hand up. Okay, thank you. Right, Councillors Brown and Pringle. I'm going to go to Councillor Pringle because I might make it simpler,
Councillor Brockbank. If I go first, I might
then.
make it simpler. I'm prepared to be guided by Councillor Shuttleworth and Councillor Pringle and withdraw my suggestion. It's anyway Councillor Pringle's motion, and I think we're now in a position of not having to think about the droughts on it and having a borehole size condition.
Yeah, because it is a sizable flow from the borehole. Councillor Pringle.
Just to try and clarify.
You're the final speaker now.
Just to try and clarify my thoughts for Councillor Shuttleworth. I never intended to stop water going in during drought periods. It was to originally fill them during drought periods, which obviously takes a lot of water. Once they are full, my view is that water that goes in at one end will come out at the other. And if there is a tiny bit, it'll go in and it'll come out. If there's no water going in, there'll be none coming out. But I had no intention of stopping the natural water going into the lake once the lake was full. The intention was to only, when you've dug the lake out, to only fill it up during the winter.
Yeah, right, okay, thank you for that. I can see Guy is busily writing down. So, first of all, I'm going to go to Mr. Watson. No, hang on. I'm going to go to Mr. Close first of all. Mr. Close, is there anything else you need to know? Are you happy you've got everything written down?
Yes. If you want to go to Mr. Watson, then I'll attempt to recap on members' comments.
Yeah, great. Okay, Mr. Watson, what do you think of our conditions and our proposal?
I haven't got any issue with the how biodiversity will be increased. That's straightforward. I'd like a little clarification on the climate emergency position. Are we just talking about solar panels and electric hookup charging points, or is there anything else that members have got in mind? Condition 5 can be amended to include the meter on it, but obviously there is the issue about what rights they have to abstract water in any case. The one that gives me some concern is, and I think I'd be disinclined to say that you should not change the access track, because the access track is going to be changed, because there's the section that goes off the Roman road, toll road, whatever you want to call it. It's, to the best of my knowledge, is not a designated heritage asset, and therefore there's some issue about getting involvement from a heritage consultant to approve any amendments to the access track. You've got the scheme in front of you with the track unaltered, except for that section that goes into the field. The only comment I would make on the section that goes into the field is there sufficient land to have the track and a passing place or passing places? Because obviously the application site edge dread is actually quite tight, and it isn't much more than a single width track as it is at the moment. But on those general points, I think that appropriate conditions can be constructed. I'm grateful that you're not wanting to give the enforcement team any hard work, but if it satisfies members, I think go along with it. The only point that has been raised is about no chemical treatment, and I'm not certain how, in planning terms, I can put an enforceable condition on that satisfies paragraph 55 of the NPPF when you're talking about chemical treatment of a fishing pond. That's the one that does give me some concern, because I think that is more likely to be licensed by other means, not via a planning condition. Other than that, Chairman, if I picked up those points, unless Guy's going to be in a position to provide further interpretation on note things, I'm happy to go to Guy. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Guy?
Before I do,
sorry.
yeah, so go on.
I've just got Councillor Shuttleworth has put his hand up. Is that anything new that you want to add, Councillor Shuttleworth?
Yes, it is, Chairman. Yes. May I continue?
Yes.
It's asking a question to hopefully attempt to allay Councillor Heseltine's fears about shortages of water elsewhere. These ponds, how is the water seeping away going to be controlled? I mean, are the ponds going to be lined with a synthetic liner or puddle clay, perhaps in the old-fashioned way that reservoirs were constructed, to minimise the amount of natural seepage into the surrounding ground, because that could have quite a distinct influence on the amount of water required to top up the lakes. Is that something we know? Does the applicant's agent have an answer to that?
Well, we'll ask Mr. Watson first of all, and then Mr. Watson, do you have an answer to that?
No, sorry, Chairman, I don't. I don't know whether it's going to be puddle clay, artificial line. I don't know what the answer is.
Can I go to the applicant's agent then and just ask, because it's a technical question, can I ask the applicant's agent, please? Do you have an answer to that?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
The applicants envisage that they'll be using clay from the site to line the ponds, but obviously until they actually come to the point of digging them out and constructing them, that will remain to be seen, but it's their intention that there is clay. They think that they've got clay on site to be able to use to line the ponds.
And if there isn't clay?
Then it'll have to be by some other means, I assume by some kind of liner.
Okay, so they are proposing to line the pond to minimise seepage.
Oh yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Shuttleworth, are you happy? You're muted. Oh, okay. You happy yet?
Yeah.
Good, thanks. Okay, right. Mr. Close, have you managed to get all that?
I'll try. So just starting with Councillor Brown's 4 reasons. So number 1, a statement to be included in relation to demonstrating an increase in biodiversity. Number 2, plan to be submitted demonstrating compliance with carbon neutral policy and climate emergency. Number 3, in relation to water, plan demonstrating how condition is 5 is achieved and chemical treatment not to be applied. Number 4, might need some clarification about this one around no change to the access road without a plan being submitted to the council and the need for a heritage assessment. Councillor Heseltine suggested a condition to include a meter to measure the extraction rate. Then going back to Councillor Pringle's original reason for approval, subject to a condition, which Councillor Pringle may wish to clarify this. I believe it was in relation to water rates, unable to fill ponds from stream water except in winter months. So I don't know if any members have any clarification on any of those areas. Those are the reasons that I had. Okay,
right. Thank you. I just want to clarify that. Mr. Strickland, is there something you want to add?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just on the second condition that we're talking about with regard to the climate emergency, planning manager made reference to it, just about making sure that we're precise with respect to what is required on that. There's been talk about charging points and solar panels. Maybe if the condition could be worded specifically with regard to those rather than the wider climate emergency, it might be helpful just to make sure it meets the tests. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yes, I seem to remember, I'm going to refer to Mr. Brown, but am I right, Mr. Brown? Sorry, Councillor Brown, in thinking, in hearing that you said solar panels and electric charging points?
In this case, yes, Councillor Brockburn, that we have been using a standard condition about this in other applications that could simply have been copied over, but that'd be fine. Could I also, whilst I've got the floor, should say that I'm comfortable if we was to drop the chemical. I take Neville Watson's, Mr. Watson's points on that, and I'm comfortable if he wishes to drop the heritage. I mean, it's up to Councillor Pringle and Councillor Place, but I wouldn't have any objection with them changing that.
Thank you, Councillor Pringle.
You've taken the words out of my mouth. Perfect. Mr. Watson said, forget the heritage. Brown's happy that we forget the heritage on the road. Let's cross out the word heritage on the road and deal with it in the field next door. As for the chemical one, you've surprised me, but fine. Thank you.
Okay, great.
It's not the heritage I'm suggesting we forget, it's the heritage advisor.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Mr. Close, do you need any more information? Do you need any more clarification, or can we go to the vote? Well, can I go to the vote, should I say?
Yes, well, if you're happy, so it's been moved and seconded for approval with those conditions and subject to that clarification that's just been provided. So if, I can take you through the vote. If members could indicate whether they're for, against, or they wish to abstain on that motion. So Councillor Brockbank.
For.
Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Heseltine.
Against.
Councillor Liz.
For.
Councillor Morell.
For.
Councillor Place.
For.
Councillor Pringle.
For.
Councillor Rose.
I think it's the strangest thing we've come across, but yes, for.
Councillor Shuttleworth.
For.
Councillor Sutcliffe.
Abstain.
And Councillor Whitaker.
Against.
Against. Okay, just let me add those up. So there are 8 members for the motion, 2 against, and there was 1 abstention.
So that is carried with those conditions. Thank you very much. Okay. 3 o'clock. Does anybody need a short comfort break, or can we carry on? Thank you very much to all the applicants, agent, and to the parish councillors. Does anybody need a comfort break?
No.
Okay, right. Riding on. The next application is 2020-21775. It's a full application by Mr. Simon Coulthard at Fountain House Farm Buildings, The Green, Clapham, and officer's recommendation is for approval. So I'm going to ask the Watson to give us his presentation.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application to convert 2 barns into 3 dwellings and the conversion of an extension of a stone outbuilding to form 1 dwelling. The scheme was originally submitted for 5 dwellings, but has now been amended to conversion to 4. That's the site plan. You've got the new inn and the B6480. And then you've got the primary school, and this is Fountain House Farm, which is now surrounded by residential property because there is the recently constructed estate, which isn't shown on this Ordnance Survey plan, but it's in this location to the east of Fountain House. That's the layout. The original scheme proposed there, that's an open fronted at the southern end of the site, or southern as we're looking at it now. No, sorry, it's the northern end because there's a north point on it. That's where there is a building that is open fronted and was used for cattle storage. I'll show you the photograph of that building as we go through the rest of the presentation, but it's to convert the larger of the two buildings, larger of the two stone building to a barn. That's conversion and small extension on the side of it. This is the one that has a more substantial extension, plot 3, because you'll see from the photographs when we get to them that that is effectively a small building, and there's a blockwork building, open building in that location, and this is obviously the extension of that, but it's within the main built-up area of Clapham and is now surrounded by other residential properties. That's showing you the elevations of the larger barn to conversion to two dwellings. That's plot 3, and this is the one where there is a relatively modest building in that location there, which is the bottom left-hand corner of as where the cursor is now, and that's the extension that would be constructed adjacent to the existing structure. That's the elevation to plot 4, which is the one at the back of the site, and you'll see that there is an element of reconstruction in that location there on the left-hand side of it as you look at the building. That's the old school, which is northeast of the site. That's the dwelling, which is southwest of the access point. And I'm now going to take you on a short walk through the site itself. So you've got the school on the left-hand side, the existing dwelling on the right-hand side. That's what's referred to as plots 1 and 2, as you see it from the access point. And on the left-hand side there is the open-fronted animals building, which is going to be now demolished. It was intended to put another house there, but that's been deleted from the scheme. That's the open-fronted building that I referred to previously. That no longer forms part of the scheme, and you're going to get some parking spaces in the location of that building. That's plot 3, and you'll see from that that's quite a modest building, but the blockwork element is where the new extension to the stone building would be. That's looking back down towards that single-story building. This element of plots 1 and 2 would be demolished, and obviously you get access around the side to plot 4. That's the new development on the other side of the wall, which is, I think, just recently been completed or within the last couple of years. This is the rear of plot 4, which goes into a paddock. The paddock doesn't form part of the application site. And that's the front of plot 4, which would be converted to the single dwelling. And that's a close-up of the front of plots 1 and 2. Chairman, that's the end of the presentation. At this point in time, I'm going to recommend a minor change to the recommendation, and that's because it was difficult to do. The BAT survey is somewhat out of date, and there is a need to actually review that position, and therefore the recommendation before you now, or my recommendation to you, is to defer consideration and give me authority to approve the application, subject to the receipt of a satisfactory BAT survey, which obviously can take place within, as soon as we move into May, that survey can be done and carried out. So it's not delaying the application significantly. That's the recommendation, Chairman. I'll leave it to you.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. So we now go on to the Parish Council. There's no Guy, can you just confirm that? Is there anyone from the Parish Council to speak?
There's no one from the Parish Council.
Thank you. So we have two objectors who are going to share the 5 minutes. Anne Stewart, which Democratic Services are going to read out, and Ian Crossley. Mr. Crossley, do you want to go first, and then I'll ask Democratic Services to read out Anne Stewart's after yourself? So you have, I'm not quite sure how long the other Anne Stewart's is. So you have 5 minutes in total.
Yeah, we had a quick look. Anne's statement is about a minute long. So we spoke to Mr. Crossley. We said, so you've got, if you want to share the 5 minutes, then Mr. Crossley's got 4 minutes. And as I say, Anne Stewart's statement is about a minute long.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Crossley, would you like to unmute yourself, please, and introduce yourself? And then you've got 4 minutes. You're not. Hang on. You haven't unmuted.
I'm unmuted now. Yep.
Yes, thank you. We can hear you.
I'm in Crossley. I live next door to the site. So we've no objection to the redevelopment of redundant farm buildings. However, this is not an isolated farm building, so the design needs to reflect its location and respect the residential nature of the neighbouring properties as shown. The report contains 2 quite significant errors. The site is part of Clapham Conservation Area, and the primary school which adjoins the site is a Grade 2 listed building. So the design needs to ensure Clapham's historic nature is conserved. We are concerned that the properties are designed as holiday homes rather than full-time occupation, and the committee can set a condition that these homes are for full-time occupation, as was done at the last meeting on.
Oh, lovely. The biscuit talking with that.
Yeah. Sorry. So we're concerned.
Just hang on a minute.
Sorry. Can I continue?
Sorry about that. It was one of the councillors who wasn't muted.
Okay. So
do continue.
We're concerned, as is the parish council, about the quality of the road access to the site. The unmade road is part of the conservation area and provides direct access to pedestrian access to the village green. So the developer needs to bring the road up to a suitable standard. We're concerned that the surface drainage water issues that were raised by United Utilities have not been dealt with. So erosion from surface water from the farmyard directly affects the access road and will be made worse by the development. And we're concerned that the issues raised by the Environmental Health Department regarding contaminated material, dust and unsocial hours have not been included. So we're concerned that the report doesn't present our views in a balanced way. The case officer has not been to discuss the issue with any of us, and we're not even sure they've visited the properties. So our specific objections are the design for plots 1 and 2, of which you only saw the front side, not the rear side in the photos, removes large parts of the existing ship and barn. This is completely out of character with traditional farm building architecture. The roof design creates 2 courtyards, which are referred to as a little quirky by the case officer, and creates 2 upper floor balcony windows. So our garden will be directly overlooked, and this impacts on our quiet enjoyment of our home and garden. So we request that the roof line is left intact, and any windows overlooking neighbouring properties should use obscured glass and overhead lighting. So in summary, we're not objecting to the redevelopment of the site, but we are opposed to this design. And we're concerned that our legitimate concerns and those of some of the concerns of the statutory consultees have not been taken into account in the report. So we request that this planning application should not be approved, and the developers asked to submit a design more in keeping with its location. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right, thank you, Mr. Crossley. I'll just mute you whilst we continue. Right. Councillor, Guy Close, you've got Anne Stewart's presentation going to read to us.
Thank you, Chairman. So if I could read out Mrs. Stewart's statement. So this is her statement. I live in the bungalow next to the Fountain House Farm site. My western boundary wall at 16 Dalesview Close is 1.3 metres from the eastern wall of the proposed development. I did not object to any aspect of the original application for one dwelling, an office and parking for 4 vehicles. That application seemed to fit with current wide-ranging local plans. Both the 2020 and 2021 revised plans are on an altogether larger scale, which seriously affects the residents of the old manor house in ways they have described, and to a lesser extent, the residents of 15, 16 and 19 Dalesview Close. Only Councillor David Ireton has taken the trouble to visit my address to view the adjacent site from my side of the boundary wall. The creation of homes on plots 3 and 4 on the revised plans, plus gardens, parking spaces and bin areas, will inevitably bring a reduction in privacy, light and quiet. The sheer scale of the proposed development will have serious consequences for the access tracks to the site of the B6480, which runs through Clapham. These services are completely unsuitable for demolition traffic, construction traffic and building supplies traffic, quite apart from an increased number of residents' vehicles when that scale of building is complete. The present sloping track services are a barrier to anyone with pedestrian mobility difficulties and for wheelchair users, whether motorised or not. A basic journey to the nearby community shop and postbox is denied. And that is the statement, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so moving on now to Ward Councillor is Councillor Liss. Councillor Liss, do you want to speak at this moment in time, or do you want to wait till we go to the debate?
Let me think. I'm just interested in what I thought Mr. Watson was speaking next in terms of his response to the speakers, or should
well, normally Ward Councillor will go now, and then Mr. Watson would speak after that. But if you want to hear Mr. Watson speak first.
Well, yeah, I'm awfully interested. I'm awfully interested in hearing what Mr. Watson's response is to some of the issues that was raised, particularly by Mr. Crossley, and in answer to the second comment. I know that my presence isn't that. I did in fact go to the site with Councillor Ireton. Now he's a lot bigger than me. He may not have seen me, but I did actually visit the site way back before COVID, actually, before any mention of COVID. So, and I think I saw Mr. Crossley on that visit. But nevertheless, that's by the by. I'd be interested in what I'd appreciate the chance to speak first after Mr. Watson has spoken, and I'll speak as a planning committee member.
Okay, thank you. Right. So, Mr. Watson, do you want to respond?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that you've got to determine the application that is in front of you. So we're not in a position to actually negotiate by a committee alterations to the scheme that's in front of you. You either accept it or you don't accept it. Clearly, the site is not exclusively in the conservation area. I'm just looking at the plan in front of me now. It is obviously in the area of outstanding natural beauty. There is the commitment to the land to the rear, and that is part of a housing allocation. So that's why the reference was that it is actually almost surrounded by residential development now, because you've got the school, you've got the cottage on the other side, and you've got the new development to the east of the site. At this stage, Chairman, I'll certainly answer any questions later on, but there's nothing further that I would wish to add at this stage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, so we're now going on to the debate, and I'll ask Councillor Liss as ward member if he would like to speak first.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, unfortunately, Mr. Watson didn't answer the question with regard to was the school a listed building, which was one of the points that Mr. Crossley did raise. But I'll wait until the end of the debate. And I'm interested in hearing what the debate, how the debate goes today. Members will be aware from looking at the report that the parish council, by majority, supported the application. I called this in. I called it in for a number of reasons, and it was a long time ago now. And the plans have in fact changed from the last time when I did call it in. At that point, there was one more house on this site than there is now. So my argument about overdevelopment perhaps isn't quite as relevant as it, well, it isn't as relevant as it was then. I think in terms of the site itself, there is some planning gain on it, in that it'll tidy up what looks to me to be a bit of an eyesore currently. So that point of it is quite acceptable, I think. One of the issues that I have is I seem to remember quite a while back that there was some limit. The road, the access road is a private road actually, and I seem to recollect that there was some limit on how many houses were allowed to use a private road. I seem to recollect something as that, and certainly my conversations with Councillor Ayton, he felt the same as I did. I did have feelings again quite a while back in terms of access to the site, but we're now told by Highways that there's nothing wrong with that access. So of course we have to accept the view of Highways, don't we? And I shall certainly do that. However, the surfacing of the road, it is in a sorry state, I have to say, and I don't know whether or not we can insist on the developer doing something about that surface. But going back to what Mr. Watson said, we are here to make a judgment on this application that's in front of us, not anything other than that. And whilst there's been some comment from objectors that they preferred the original site, that is now not an option as far as this planning committee is concerned. We are here to make a judgment on this particular application. So I shall wait until what how the debate goes, and then form a view following that. Thank you, Chairman.
Very much, Councillor Liss. Excuse me. Oh dear. Okay, right. I've got 3 hands up. Now, I'm not sure if it was Councillor Pringle or Councillor Sutcliffe who was first. Whoever, Councillor Sutcliffe, were you first? Do you want to unmute yourself and go ahead?
I'm unmuted now. Yes, I read this in great detail, and I was interested to hear Councillor Liss's comments on that. I think basically in this proposal, I couldn't readily think of any reason for refusing it. Councillor Liss has made the point that there is a modest planning gain. The road questions, I would suggest, are a legal matter, not a reason for either approving or refusing the application. And the development in total, to my simple mind, seems to, having looked at the photographs and regrettably not being able to have a site visit, of course, are enhancing the area. So I'll be quite happy to support it if Councillor Liss wishes to move approval or second it, but I'll wait and see how the debate develops, Chairman.
Thank you for that, Councillor Sutcliffe. Councillor Pringle, you were next.
Thank you. Yeah, interested to hear Councillor Liss say that the rules have changed since he called it in, because I went to see it yesterday and I spent time with the applicant and I spent time with both the objectors, and I don't think we can turn it down as overdevelopment, because it exactly fits the policy we have at 30 houses per hectare. So I'm interested to hear that 5's gone to 4, and I think that's good. My main concern, I heard lots of objections about we want local people to live there. I don't think that's something we as a committee can address. Maybe the spatial committee can address it for the future version of the local plan, but we don't have policies about local occupancy like North Yorkshire do. I think that overlooking was the main reason I wanted to see the properties, and I saw 2 properties. Ian was kindly enough to show me his, and I went round to see the lady who said nobody had been except David Ayrton. Well, Councillor Liss has been, and I've been as well. Yes, they have concerns, but in all honesty, I don't think we're going to turn it down on overlooking grounds. I think it's a scheme that I don't want to steal Councillor Liss's thunder if he's going to propose it. But if he isn't, I'll happily propose or second it. I thank the objectors and the applicants for their time, without which I would have been struggling to come to a conclusion. But I'm pretty happy, as they say, there's planning game there. It's use of a good site. It is totally surrounded by houses now, because even the slide that's shown as a field has planning permission for a massive mansion, and there's a whole new housing estate next to it. I know the objectors had complaints that we're building lots of houses without any jobs. I share those concerns. Get on to your spatial committee members and say we cannot keep building houses without jobs. But that's not a reason for us to turn this one down. I would be struggling to turn it down, so with apologies to the objectors, if nobody else proposes it, I will, but let's see what happens.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pringle. Councillor Brown, you were next.
Yeah, I also took the time to drive over there and have a look at it and walk it out. I obviously didn't knock on the neighbour's door because it's not appropriate during COVID to go that far, but had a decent route around, and I agree with the assessment that building on this site is reasonable infill, and I couldn't see any reason to overall reject. However, I could see some conditions that needed to be applied, so I'd like to propose 4 conditions on this occasion. The first is that I'd like to see a condition of residential use only, no holiday letting. I think that should be a fairly simple condition to apply, and then means that it's meeting our housing supply rather than kind of anything else, and that's the big gain for me.
We've lost you, Councillor Brown. Oh, I can't see you.
Can you see me now?
You're back. Yes, you're back
okay.
again.
Sorry, I'm getting
last
internet.
Thing I heard. That's okay. Last thing I heard was a condition for residential use only. It hasn't been proposed and seconded yet, but
well, I'm prepared to propose it so that I can get these conditions included in. So, firstly, I'm proposing it with a condition of residential only, no holiday lettings. The second one is my concern about biodiversity increase. I take Neville's point about the back assessment, etc. But our policy isn't that there should be limitation of damage. Our policy is there should be an improvement in biodiversity. And I think it's quite possible for them to put in bat boxes, swift boxes, hedgehog runs, measures which would increase tree planting that would increase the biodiversity whilst doing the site. Now, I would like that to be plan to do that to be submitted to our officers before work commences. Yeah, pretty much in line with Neville's thoughts about that being approved before it goes forward. Same point really about the climate emergency. I see no reason why there shouldn't be electric vehicle charging points on this. I see no reason why facing the school it wouldn't be a good example to the children to see solar panels. Though admittedly that's north facing.
The school's closed. Councillor
Oh, right. So yeah, you're right. I'm
just
sorry. So, but anyway, I'd like to see a condition that a plan submitted about how the development will contribute to carbon neutrality. Again, and the fourth point is one I'm in some doubt about. I was going to propose that the access road be brought up to standard as part of the work, but if the ownership isn't in the applicant's hands, so I would propose that the arrangements for the access road to be agreed with our officers before we proceed, rather than specifying what those arrangements are. That arrangements for the access road improvements to be agreed with our officers before we proceed. The fifth point I would just picked up from thing is obscured glass on the 2 windows that overlook. Could we have that added as well? So I'm prepared to go for approval with those 5 conditions.
Okay. And you are proposing it?
I'm
Yeah?
formally proposing it.
With those conditions, do we have a seconder?
Yes, Chairman, I'll second it.
Councillor Sutcliffe?
Could I also just briefly speak, Chairman, whilst I'm seconding it?
Yes, if you're seconding it, yes.
Yeah.
Where are you?
I'm a little bit concerned. We do have to have an equitable policy, and we are now imposing conditions which we don't necessarily oppose across the spectrum of the applications we receive. I can understand that Councillor Brown's suggestions are well motivated, but I would like to ask Councillor List, for instance, because he's the councillor who will get the response to these conditions if there's an objection. Are you happy, Councillor List, via the chair, if I may, with what is being proposed? Because I think we're perhaps being a little bit onerous.
Well, are you withdrawing your seconding then?
No, I'm quite happy to second it. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Liss, you're on.
If you want to respond, yeah. I'm happy with that. I would appreciate if something could be done with the road, but I do know how difficult that might be. So whatever officers can do would be much appreciated. In terms of the requirements that Councillor Brown has suggested, of course, as Green League member for Craven, and well aware that Craven have adopted the climate change emergency, and that be discussed at every aspect of planning applications. I totally support the provision of whatever we can do in terms of climate change mitigation. So, and I thought that we were including that in our planning approvals. So I'm rather surprised that there's any question on that at all. It's simply something that we now advise applicants that we would like them to do, to be truthful.
Yep.
As a matter of course.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Councillor List. Yes, I'm with you. I thought that those things were automatically included in planning applications nowadays. So we have Councillor List, Councillor Pringle. Who was first?
I've spoken, Chairman, so I'm fine.
Oh, sorry, I said Councillor List, and I apologise. Councillor Shuttleworth, Councillor Pringle. I don't know who was first.
I think, hasn't Councillor Pringle spoken already?
Just need to clarify one thing, please, or two things. The applicant brought up, the objector brought up a point which was a valid point and said we haven't got the environmental health working hours and dust clause in there, and that does need to go in there. And the second thing is, can I ask the lawyers and Mr. Watson, are we allowed to impose a condition that it has to be lived in rather than owned as a holiday home or let out as a short-term let? Because this is whole news to me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, well, we'll come to that when we finish the debate. Mr. Watson, we'll come back to you when we finish the debate. You can have a bit of a rest. Councillor Shuttleworth.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Councillor Pringle's stolen my glory with the last two questions he raised. But don't worry about it. I haven't heard anything in this debate that would cause me to change my mind from supporting approval of the scheme. But there's one issue that to me does need resolving. We've a condition requiring further details for foul and surface water drainage. Now, when I've looked at the plans, they clearly show that foul and surface water are to be connected to public sewers, respectively, public sewers. So why are we putting this as a condition? The only interesting thing is that those sewers are on adjoining land which doesn't appear to be within the application area. In fact, no red line indicated on the around the application site, which is an issue that overspilled from a previous discussion we've had at this committee. Can we have some clarification from Mr. Watson, please?
Yep. Okay. Right. So no more hands up. And Mr. Watson, do you want to respond to members?
There's a couple of points that need picking up, Chairman. This is an application for small open market dwellings. So that is under the use classes order a C3 use. There is some difficulty in actually saying it can't be put on a short-term let or being used for holiday accommodation, because holiday accommodation is a C3 use as well. I do appreciate the point that's been made, but at this point in time, the application is for open market small properties. But at some stage, I couldn't guarantee that it couldn't be used for short-term lets, or indeed, you know, at the end of the day, they are residential properties. And it begs the question whether it is, does it make any difference if it's one occupant for 52 weeks or 52 occupants for a week apiece? And it's the use classes order that causes the difficulty. I fully appreciate where members are coming from, but I think that there might be overstepping the mark to actually say that it can't be used for other uses. But perhaps Alex can assist me on that one if I've got hold of the wrong end of the use classes order. On the issue of the access road, if I can take members, and I don't know whether if you look at page 27, the one that's got the map on at the back of the at the end of the report, you'll see that the application site goes from Old Road into the site. That just proves that there is potentially a right of access from the application site to the public highway. If you look at all the other properties that are to the south and southwest of the application site, you would be effectively asking the applicant to upgrade the highway to serve private interests further down the lane. And that's something that I think is perhaps overstepping the mark. What I can offer you, though, is that there is details of a conditions statement of the existing highway, the private track, to ensure that after construction, that track is in no worse state than it is at the moment. But I don't think you can press the button and go for the upgrade when it serves more than one property, and it's not simply this site. Had the application site come from Old Road simply to the application site, that might have been a reasonable option. But to end up making the developer pay for the upgrade of the highway, which is, well, the upgrade of the private road, is something that I think is overstepping the mark and wouldn't satisfy the requirements of the paragraph 55 of the NPPF. On issues of drainage, obviously United Utilities have made specific comments, and they're saying that the site shall be drained on a separate system with foul draining to the public sewer and surface water in the most sustainable way. And that's why there is the condition on the details of foul and surface water shall be submitted for approval, and that's condition 3. So I hope that that addresses it, and we're just covering the options that the full expectation is that the foul drainage will go to the foul sewer, but there isn't a surface water sewer, and what you don't want is surface water going into a foul sewer because it's not a combined system. So I think that adequately and hopefully addresses concerns that members have expressed. But as I say, my advice and recommendation is that consideration is deferred. I don't like deferring consideration, but this is one where I'm not coming back to committee on, because all we want to defer it for is for the BAT survey because it's out of date. And that bat survey can be done within the next month, because that's when bat activities come out of hibernation and start and be able to address them. So that's the recommendation, Chairman. I'll leave you to take it to the vote.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, sorry, Mr. Strickland, do you
Yes,
want
Chair.
to?
Yes, Chair, thank you. Just very quickly, just to underline really what's been said about use class 3, it would be difficult to restrict this to holiday use on the basis that's been set out. So I agree with the other comments that have been made. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, so I'm going to go to, it's been proposed by Councillor Brown, it's been seconded by Councillor Sutcliffe. I'm just going to go to Mr. Close now for just to go through the conditions, please, and the decision, so that we all know what we're voting for. Oh, Councillor Brown, you put your hand up.
Yeah, I was going to say, just in light of Neville's comments, it might be a good idea to, I wanted to go to Councillor Brown just to seek clarification on the conditions.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, Councillor Brown. You muted.
I think if I read the body language on screen correctly, my condition 1 about residential only, there isn't support for. Can you hear me okay?
Could you say that again? I'm sorry.
I think my condition 1 about residential only, there isn't support for generally, so I withdraw the condition 1 if Alan would indicate he's comfortable with that as a seconder. The other one that I would like to change is that condition 4, I think Neville Watson proposed that the Axe Road should be no worse than at commencement of the and that should be confirmed with the council before the site signed off or something to that effect. So that's basically the condition, rather than that they should improve it. I buy Neville's points entirely there. And I wasn't sure I heard any answer as to whether my request for obscure grass being included as a condition was acceptable or not.
You're right, there wasn't an answer. I just took it was. Mr. Watson.
I can come back on that one. I've made a note of the obscure glazing to avoid overlooking, and yes, that can be included.
Okay, thank you. Oh, right, so Mr. Close. Oh, sorry, hang on with me. Councillor Liss has got his hand up.
So I'm sorry, Chairman.
Right.
Can I just ask that, so that I'm clear, we are moving the delegated approval. It's delegated approval subject to the bat boxes issue being sorted. Okay.
That's yes. That's just what I'm going to establish now with Mr. Close. What we're voting on and the conditions. Just so we'll get the wording of Mr. Close.
Okay, so
please, and then.
So the officer recommendation is that it be deferred consideration of the head of planning services to approve, subject to the receipt of a bat survey. Would you like me to go through the conditions that were put forward by Councillor Brown?
Yes, please.
By Councillor Smith. Right. So we remove the condition around no holiday let. So the next one after that is measures in place to increase biodiversity. We also had a condition around a plan in place about contributing to ensuring to carbon neutrality and ensuring that there is electric charging points and solar panels. Next one I've got is arrangements for the access road to be discussed with officers prior to commencement of works. A point about obscured glass to prevent overlooking. And then the only point I'd like some clarification on is Councillor Shuttleworth and Councillor Pringle both raised points about environmental health conditions to be added around foul and surface water drainage. So I just wanted some clarification about what we're doing with that one, please.
Right, okay. Before I just move on to the, sorry, no, you're right. Yeah, can we have clarification on that, please? Was it Councillor Whitaker?
It was points, both Councillor Shuttleworth and Councillor Pringle both made points about that.
Right, thank you. Councillor Shuttleworth, Councillor Pringle, do you want to, one of you want to clarify?
If I could, Chairman, sorry, Richard, I'm a bit to it. But certainly to control hours of working and minimise dust emission would be an important condition. I think there's something, there's usually a standard paragraph or recommendation in the condition to be able to duplicate. And I think Mr. Watson's answer to my concerns about foul and surface water drainage have been answered, that it's a safeguarding condition that's already been recommended to ensure that things are done properly in respect of surface water drainage.
So
right, Mr. Watson?
It's the issue that I think we've been discussing at committee on more than one occasion, is that it's not prior to occupation, it's to ensure that the surface water drainage goes in as part of the construction project, because if you put in hard surfaces in and everything else, you could end up with a problem thereafter. Having said that, it becomes self-controlling in a way, because the builder's not going to effectively complete the conversion works and extension works without having the drainage in place. But I understand the point that's been made, and we can address that. Thank you.
Okay. The access road, this is for Guy really, the access road, it was that it would be no worse than it was before they were started. Councillor Brown, you've got your hand up.
Just
are
to
you
say,
happy with all of that?
I'd be happy to incorporate in the motion the points that Councillor Shuttleworth and Councillor Pringle said, and to say one other thing, that I wasn't as prescriptive in the climate change things as Guy's motion, saying I didn't insist on solar panels, they might do it by heat exchange units. I wanted a plan to be submitted that the council officers agreed. Right, and I take Alan's point that being over prescriptive on these things is too much.
Okay, thank you. You are breaking up a little bit, but I got the gist of that. So, Mr. Close, did you get?
Chairman, can I just come back on the issue of the access road? Effectively, what you do is that you provide a scheme to survey the state of it, and that can be photographic. You know, it's not unduly onerous. And what you do is you record the state of the road as it currently stands, to ensure that the construction traffic doesn't damage the private road, and you end up with a worse situation than you've got now. The point that I was making is that you can't go one step further and make them do something that is for the benefit of other people. You've got to be realistic about it and say, provide information of the state of the road that it is at the moment, and they will have to repair, if there is construction damage, they have to repair that the private road back to the state, or leave it in no worse state than it is at the moment. It's fairly standard, and you know that's not difficult to achieve.
Okay, thank you. Right, Mr. Close, you have the floor.
Okay, are you, Chairman, are you happy with the conditions that have been agreed then, that have been put forward to the committee? Are you happy to go to the vote, or do you want to recap on where we are?
Oh, Mr. Strickland wants to say something.
Yeah, very quickly, just on the condition with regards to climate change, and I appreciate the point about flexibility, but I'm just wondering whether the intention can just be clarified on that, because we need to ensure that it meets all the tests in terms of being precise, and paragraph 55 of the MPPF.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
All I really want, Alex, is that we use the wording we used on at least 2 applications at the last meeting, and had begun to be standard wording, that the applicant was required to contribute to the climate emergency. There's some wording in the applications we approved at the last meeting that could simply be cut and pasted over.
Well, can we agree that wording? Can we agree that wording?
I'm afraid, unfortunately, I can't remember it. It was at least half a paragraph, at least 2 paragraphs long, but it was in the applications that we approved at the last meeting on 2 occasions.
Was it? Which applications? Can you remember the application?
I don't, I'm afraid.
Chair, I think it was just to clarify that if members had particular things that they were looking to achieve, just to assist officers in respect of.
The kind of thing I'm talking about is electric vehicle charging points,
right.
The possibility of solar panels, the possibility of heat exchange units, the possibility of higher standard of insulation, all the things that we've got in Councillor Litt's kind of green lead policies that we've agreed on.
I think we need to get some standard wording for this, and then because we're going to be going through this every time, aren't we? And as you said, Councillor Brown, if we can get some standard wording together. So let's see what Mr. Close has. What are black spaces again? Right. I'm sorry to ask you again, Guy. Could you just take us through these? Just quickly take us through the conditions, and then we can go to the vote.
Okay, so the first condition that I had was in relation to measures being in place to increase biodiversity. The next one is a plan in place to contribute to carbon neutrality and climate emergency. So just perhaps some clarification around that, and that's agreed with officers. The next point, arrangements for the access road to be discussed with officers to ensure that it's no worse prior to commencement of works. Obscured glass to prevent overlooking, and then an environmental health condition, control hours of working, and dust emission as well.
Yeah. Right, Councillor Brown, you're the proposer. Are you happy with those conditions? Councillor Sutcliffe, you're the seconder. Are you happy with those conditions?
I'm quite happy with it, Chairman, and move to the vote whenever you want.
Right, we're off. We're off. Mr. Close, would you like to take us through the vote, please?
Okay, so just to confirm, as the recommendation is that it's deferred for consideration to the Head of Planning Services to approve, subject to receipt of the BAT survey and all the conditions that we've just discussed. So if members can indicate whether they wish to vote for, against, or abstain. Councillor Brockbank?
I'm for.
Councillor Brown?
For.
Councillor Heseltine?
For.
Councillor Liz?
For.
Councillor Morell?
For.
Councillor Place?
For.
Councillor Pringle?
For.
Councillor Rose?
For.
Councillor Shuttleworth?
For.
Councillor Sutcliffe?
For.
And Councillor Whitaker. Just need to mute yourself, Councillor Whitaker.
For.
Thank you. That's unanimous.
Great. Okay. Well, that concludes the schedule of plans. The next item on the agenda is any other items, and all I have under that is for members to note that the planning decisions and the enforcements that are attached. Date and time of next meeting is the 17th of May. Now, whether that will be at Bellevue or somewhere else, or whether it will be online, I don't know, but I hope to see you then, wherever it is. Thank you very much for attending today, and thank you to everybody, members of the public.